Welcome to the Exit Rich podcast, where the leading authority on buying, selling, fixing, and growing companies, Michelle Seiler Tucker, is dedicated to helping you find the path to retire rich and move on to your next adventure by exiting your business for the desired dream price you deserve. Get ready to exit rich with your host, Michelle Seiler Tucker.
Welcome to another episode of Exit Rich. Today, we're going to talk about the number one mistake business owners fail, and we're going to talk about the life and human life cycle. So the number one mistake the business owners fail is they never plan their exit. They don't think about selling until a catastrophic event has occurred. Death, partner disputes, COVID, hurricanes, you name it. There's always catastrophic events that occur. By that time, you're too late. You need to start thinking about selling when you're ready to sell. You need to sell when you think about sell. When you start thinking about selling, that's when you have to sell. Businesses don't plan to fail. They fail to plan. It used to be back in the day that 90% of all startups would fail within 3 to 5 years. That business landscape has changed dramatically. Now, 70% of all business owners that have been in business for 10 years or longer are dying on the vine. You've heard of all these stories. You've heard of Toys R Us. You've heard of Blockbuster. The list goes on and on and on. Why? Because they stopped doing AIM. Always innovate and market. Always innovate and market. Startups are succeeding because they're innovative. They're new technology. Startups are really paying attention to what is the buyer demand. What is the current market trend? And they're giving those buyers what those buyers want. That's what you need to do as well. And you know this already, 80% of businesses on the market will never sell. So we're going to talk about something very important, a human and business life cycle. The human and business life cycle is the foundation of your business. The business life cycle is the same as us. What happens? We're born, right? We're born. We're in an incubator. Guess what happens to a baby business? It's in an incubator. This is a story about Toys R Us. Charles Lazarus started his business in 1948. It was a newborn baby. And it's a furniture store, which had a 90% chance of failure. Remember, startups have a 90% chance of failure. Back then, not anymore, my friends. So think about the human. We're born, we're in the incubator. What does a newborn baby need? It needs absolutely everything. It needs constant supervision, constant oversight, a lot of money. You can never leave a newborn baby or a newborn business alone. Never. So think about that. Think about what business you have in the incubator. Then guess what? The baby goes from the incubator into the infant stage. And what do infant babies need? Everything. They still need constant supervision. They still need lots of money, lots of care, and lots of supervision. So look at 1957. Remember, Lazarus started with a furniture store, then opened his very first store modeled after a supermarket. First used the name Toys R Us. So Toys R Us was really born in 1957, even though he started that furniture store back in 1948. He owned 4 locations that year. So you go from incubator to an infant, human, business. And then guess what happens? You go from an infant to a toddler. Now, a toddler doesn't need as much supervision, but sometimes people will say it needs more because the toddler is running around, they're drawing on all the walls, they're getting into absolutely every single thing that they can possibly get into. So you need the same thing with a business. Lots of supervision, lots of money. 1969, remember we went from 1957, now we're at 1969. Toys R Us adopts Jeffrey the giraffe. Remember Jeffrey the giraffe, the brand mascot? Well, Toys R Us was starting to do good in 1974. What happened though? In 1969, they have Jeffrey. In 1974, bankruptcy and restructuring as they sold off all of their unprofitable stores. So when people file bankruptcy, when business owners file bankruptcy, Everybody's like, oh my God, that's the kiss of death. No, it's not. It's chapter 11. It's bankruptcy and restructuring. That doesn't mean that they're completely out of business forever. 1978, Toys R Us becomes traded on the New York Stock Exchange under Toys R Us. Now think about that. 1974, they filed bankruptcy. 4 years later, they're on the New York Stock Exchange. So just because you file chapter 11 doesn't mean you're out of business. Then we go from toddlers to teenagers. Now, I had a toddler. Same thing. My toddler was an infant. She became a 2-year-old. Now she's a teenager. I don't know why anybody talks about the terrible twos, because in my opinion, it's the terrible teenage years. So 1983, the first Kids R Us clothing store opened. So they had Toys R Us, and then they opened up the clothing store. 1994, 1,000 stores nationwide. 96, the first Babies R Us. Gosh, I know you guys remember Toys R Us, Kids R Us, Babies R Us. 1998, Walmart beats Toys R Us for the top toy seller. So teenagers still need a lot of supervision. You can't leave teenagers to run rapid, run around, and do whatever they want. What do they need? They need not as much supervision, but they typically take a lot more money. Teenagers are always digging in our pocket, and businesses are the same way. They still need that supervision, but they still need a lot of working capital. Young adult is a great stage. It's right after teenager. You don't need as much money and as much supervision. The young adult business doesn't need as much attention and supervision, but it's fragile. It's still fragile. It still needs someone looking over it. It still needs to make sure that the owners have the right teams in place, are functioning on the 6Ps. This is where the 6Ps comes in. This is where the 6Ps should all be stabilized and the business should be running on all 6 cylinders. Remember the 6Ps? Number 1, people. Got to make sure we have the right team, the right management team. Make sure we have a contracts in place, non-competes. Number 2, products. We got to make sure that we have multiple congruent revenue streams and our industry product service is on the way up, not on the way out. We got to make sure our processes are buttoned up in this young adult stage. That's what young adults are working on. Then we got to look at our proprietary assets. What are our proprietary assets? Well, at Toys R Us in 2001, really was focusing and building those 6Ps. Proprietary assets are branding, federal trademarks, patents, transferable contracts, branding. Toys R Us was really well established and well branded by 2001. Remember, they started, and I believe it was 1948. So young adults is where you're really being able to lay that solid foundation. What happens after young adult? 2015. This is when you're at the highest of the high, when you're at the mountain screaming from the rooftop, when you are running on all 6 cylinders, all 6Ps, when you have everything in place and the business is doing well. Look at 2015. Toys R Us beats their biggest competitor. Remember that toy store in New York, the famous one that was featured in the Home Alone movies, FAO Schwarz? They put FAO Schwarz out of business, permanently closing their Fifth Avenue store. They, in 2016, were at $11 million. This is when you sell. This is the best time that you sell your company. This is when you exit rich. Not when you're in an incubator stage, not when you're a newborn, a toddler, a teenager, a young adult. Right here, my friends, this is when you sell your company. And guess what? You think most business owners would do that? You think most business owners would say, look, this is our prime. It might not get any better than this. The markets are changing. Let's sell. But business owners don't do that. They don't think about that. They sit back fat and happy. Oh, we're doing great. We're making tons of money. We have a solid foundation. The business is going to continue to rise. So the kiss of death, they stop aim. They stop always innovating and marketing. They don't keep up with the market trends. When you don't keep up with competition, when you don't see what's happening around you, things could change. So it's very important to know this is your prime. This is when you sell because nothing ever stays the same. Let's look what happens after your prime. What happens in adulthood? Remember, Toys R Us is worth over $11 billion in 2016. Senior citizen. We're an adult. We age. We get to that senior citizen stage. Guess what? Businesses do the same thing. We're talking 1 year later in 2017. 2016, they're worth over $11 billion. They've knocked off FO shorts. They're rocking and rolling. 2017, guess what? They filed for bankruptcy on September 19th, just 2 years after dethroning FAO shorts. 2 years. So when you're fat and happy, sitting in that adult stage, thinking you got the world by your hands, thinking you can do no wrong, thinking your business is the best it's ever been. Yes, businesses rise to the top. It takes businesses a lot longer to rise to the top. It takes businesses a lot longer to build a sustainable, scalable, sellable business than it takes for businesses to crash, as they can literally crash overnight. And that's what happened to Toys R Us. They literally crashed overnight. So senior citizen, that's why the best time to sell your business in that adult stage. What happens after senior citizen? Well, 2018, Toys R Us closes 800 of their U.S. stores on March 14th. Remember, 2 years from their prime, from their adulthood. August 5th, 2018, all 1,500 stores close. They were in their adulthood in 2017, over $11 billion. But in 2018, they're out of business. They're dead. Jeffrey the Giraffe has croaked. What happened to that $11 billion? What happened to that solid foundation? What happened to the over 1,500 stores in 35 countries? What happened? We know what happened. AIM. They were fat and happy in their adulthood. They thought, gosh, we don't have anything to worry about. We're at the top of the mountain. We've closed our biggest competitor ever. We can keep riding this tide. They didn't pay attention to the market. They didn't pay attention to market trends. They didn't pay attention to buyer demand. And they certainly didn't pay attention to what the competition all around them was doing. Competition they didn't even see coming, such as Amazon. Why would you go to Toys R Us during Christmas, busiest holiday of the year, when you got to walk in there? There's a million people, it seems like, and you can't find an employee to save your life. Why would you do that? Why would you fight that crowd when you could sit back, fat and happy as a consumer, tick, 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 go to Amazon, build that shopping cart, boom, pay for it, have it delivered in a few days? Why would you ever fight that? Toys R Us never really innovated. They stayed the same when those 4 stores, back in, I believe it was 1957, were born. Yes, they built and they built and they built and they built, but they never innovated. They never caught on to e-commerce. They never caught on to online. They just sold product, but didn't create an experience. They didn't pay attention to the consumer experience. Because if you're going to fight traffic, go to Toys R Us with a bunch of other shoppers trying to buy Christmas gifts for their kids too. Why do that? No employees around to help you. Why do that? The only reason you would do that is for an experience because they do something different. They've created something different for a customer experience, hands-on approach with who better than maybe some of the customers. Who's the customers? Yes, the mom and dad pay, but the real customer are their children. They didn't innovate. They didn't market. They didn't get on that online train. They kept doing everything the same. You're either growing or dying, my friends. If you're not innovating, you're dying. If you're not innovating and marketing, you're dying. They should have sold when they were fat and happy. They should have sold when they were worth over $11 billion. That is the kiss of death. Sitting in your fat and happy stage and not selling and not innovating and continuing to market. It's really important that you keep your eye on the trend. It's really important that you innovate all the time, every day. It's not innovate done. You always innovate and you always market. Otherwise, you'll find yourself here in death. What's after death? Well, can we be rebirthed? I'm not getting into that conversation. However, in business, sometimes they are rebirthed. Look at Toys R Us in 2019. Toys R Us relaunched e-commerce. 2019, they finally relaunched e-commerce through Target, who handles fulfillment. 2022, Toys R Us announces 400 pop-up hosted within the Macy's department store. Now, they don't have their brick and mortar anymore. They don't have their standalone. They have to go off of Target's customer base or Macy's pop-up. 2024, cotton candy partnership to open up some flagship stores on the Caribbean. Think about that. That's innovation. And 2025, 7 U.S. retail locations. Mall of America is their flagship and military-based stores. So they're trying to rebirth themselves, but it's extremely difficult. The name of the game is, guess what? You sell when you're an adult. Because when most businesses die, they're dead. What cycle? Ask yourself, what cycle is your business in? Are you in a newborn? Are you a toddler? You need a lot of supervision? Is your business about to die? Because there's over 34 million businesses in the United States. Remember, 70% of those businesses have been in business for 10 years or longer are going out of business. What cycle are you in? If you're an adult, you need to reach out, get exit rich, call us immediately because that's your prime. That's your time to sell. So think about what cycle you're in and what you need to do next. If you're an incubator, you still need to get exit rich. And you really need to think about, how do I build that solid foundation on those 6 Ps? Because you should always start from the beginning to plan your exit strategy. Ask yourself, what's your destination? Do you want to sell for $20 million? Great. What are you worth today? $1 million? You got some work to do. What's your time frame? 15 years? Great. What's those KPIs? What are those buyers looking for? Build a sustainable, scalable, sellable business, and you sell in your adulthood. Here's a business that we worked with, and they were in, I would say the stage they were in was infant, incubator to infant. Now, they had been in business for many, many years. This is a graphics company that I partner with. The initial valuation, they were not sellable due to lack of employees. They had a job, not a business. Actually, had one employee, husband and wife. They worked out of the garage of their house. They wanted to sell because they didn't think that they had the bandwidth. They didn't think that they had the business acumen. They didn't think they could grow the company. But they had lots of things things going forward. Out of these, they function on 3 of them. These clients were turning down 6,000 clients a year. My partners were turning down 6,000 clients a year. They did not have a business acumen to grow operating only on the 6 Ps. They didn't have any people. They had one. And when they told that one person they were going to sell their business, guess what that one person did? What do you think they did? They quit. They had no people, no processes, and no proprietary. But what they did have is they had a great product. They had congruent revenue streams and how they got paid. They were known for their quality. They were known for their craftsmanship. They were known for their showmanship. Why were they turning down 6,000 clients a year? Because they were that good. This company's never had the market. They still don't have the market. So they had great products. They had this is a niche business. They had a huge customer base. Huge. 0 customer concentration. And they had profits. Their business was in high demand. But they were burned out. They didn't know how to grow the company. They just lost a 1 employee. And I told them, you're not sellable. I can't sell your business because, again, they were in an infant stage. Never even made it to toddler. What's the solution here? I partnered with them. I invested my money, implemented a custom build to sell blueprint. Happy to tell you that this company will exit for millions. We will exit for an 8 million figure range. And this company was barely holding on when they called me to sell their business. Can we sell your business sometimes in infant, toddler, teenager state, young adult? Yes, of course we can. But if you get to that adult stage, you better sell because you don't want to find yourself as a Toys R Us. Don't find yourself in a Toys R Us situation. Don't find yourself in an infant stage situation because I work with business owners over and over and over again. I've been doing this for over 26 years. And my core competency, my team's core competency as Seiler Tucker is to really work with business owners to help them plan their GPS exit model, build a solid foundation of the 6 Ps, and most importantly, build a sustainable, scalable, sellable business so you can be and get to your adult stage and we can sell your business and help you to exit rich. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Exit Rich. I know you found it informative. Please share it with your network, your influencers, and please subscribe to our Exit Rich podcast. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Exit Rich podcast. Don't forget to check out Michelle Seiler Tucker's Build to Sell Blueprint books and Exit Rich, along with more blogs, videos, and resources at exitrichpodcast.com. Be sure to connect with Michelle on Facebook or LinkedIn and stay tuned for her next episode by subscribing in your favorite podcast player.